Tonight, Democrats divided over President Biden's future.
Are you all on the same page?
No. What do you mean you're not on the same page?
They're not even in the same book.
As the NATO summit with world leaders begins here in Washington.
Welcome to the 2024 NATO summit.
The critical week ahead for the president to calm concerns within his party.
Let's see the press conference. Let's see the campaign stops. Let's see all of this, because all of it is going to be necessary.
The CBS Evening News starts now. President Biden just spoke at the NATO summit here in Washington, D.C., a speech that has become as much about his fitness for office as it is about his foreign policy. Good evening. I'm Norah O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. The president spoke about Ukraine policy and maintaining a united front to prevent another world war. But the world's focus wasn't only on what he said, but how he said it, as he tries to fight back calls within his own party to step aside. And just hours ago, a new Democratic defection, a New Jersey congresswoman and former U.S. Navy pilot saying, "Because I know President Biden cares deeply about the future of our country, I am asking that he declare that he won't run for re-election." But a lot of her colleagues are either sticking behind Biden or staying quiet, at least in public. CBS's Scott McFarland is on the Hill talking to lawmakers, and Ed O'Keefe is at the White House and kicks off our team coverage.
Tonight, President Biden welcoming members of NATO to Washington while questions swirl about his political future.
It's a pleasure to host you in this milestone year.
The annual summit is set to have a big focus on Ukraine. That country's fate could hang in the balance if Democrats lose the White House.
But make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin.
And now, even European leaders are facing questions about the American president's future.
Diese Sorge habe ich nicht.
The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz today saying he's not worried about Biden's ability to handle the summit. The White House remained on the defensive, trying to move on from the president's debate performance.
We do want to turn the page.
But facing more questions again today about the president's health.
The White House medical unit, his doctor, they don't believe that he needs anything more than what we have been able to provide.
Overnight, the White House released a letter from the president's physician saying the commander-in-chief hasn't seen a neurologist outside of his 3 annual physicals, and that a neurology specialist who visited the White House at least 8 times in the past year was seeing other patients. Campaigning in Las Vegas this afternoon, Vice President Harris turned her attention to former President Donald Trump.
So make no mistake, if Trump gets the chance, he will sign a national abortion ban to outlaw abortion in every single state. But we are not going to let that happen.
Trump held his own rally tonight outside Miami.
Despite all the Democrat panic this week, the truth is it doesn't matter who they nominate because we are going to beat any one of them in thundering landslides.
And in Washington, House Speaker Mike Johnson says President Biden needs to go sooner. The cabinet should use the 25th Amendment to remove him.
What we're projecting from the White House is not strength right now, at a very dangerous time around the world. And that's why the American people are so alarmed by this.
But CBS News has contacted all members of the Biden cabinet to ask whether they've ever considered or heard any discussion about invoking the 25th Amendment. The answer among those who've responded so far is universal. No, they haven't. Nora?
Ed O'Keefe at the White House with new reporting tonight. Thank you, Ed. And nearly 2 miles down Constitution Avenue at the U.S. Capitol, Democrats held a series of high-stakes, closed-door meetings. On the House side, they were even asked to check their cell phones at the door. And as CBS's Scott McFarland reports, top Democrats are torn on whether President Biden should continue his campaign.
On a sweltering day in Washington.
We are riding with Biden.
Was there conversation about Vice President?
We are riding with Biden.
Was there conversation about Vice President Kamala Harris in there?
We are riding with Biden.
The political heat is hovering over the president's top allies.
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
His surrogates urge colleagues to line back up behind President Biden.
You don't sense concern among your colleagues?
I said many of my colleagues have concern. But what the president has done is listen to those concerns, acted on them.
But some of the most powerful Democrats in the U.S. Senate said the president has more work to do to convince skeptical voters and lawmakers.
How much time is left before a final decision has to be made, in your estimation?
I can't say. I mean, it isn't like there is a definite deadline here.
In the U.S. House, another Democrat defected. New Jersey Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill said the president should withdraw.
Just add advocating as strongly as possible that we have someone that can really take that case strongly and energetically to the voters.
Though the president has secured vocal support from the Congressional Black Caucus, Democrats exited a party meeting today without a unified plan.
Are you all on the same page?
No. What do you mean you're not on the same page?
They're not even in the same book.
There are still dozens of congressional Democrats who haven't or won't declare their position on the president's re-election. Nora will find out in the coming days if that hurts or helps the president's prospects.
Asking the tough questions, Scott McFarland on the Hill. Thank you. Now to weather and the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. Tonight, people in Texas are picking up the pieces with hundreds of thousands still without power, even as the brutal heat moves in. CBS's Omar Villafranca is there.
One day after Hurricane Beryl dumped flooding rains, southeast Texas is now sweltering. In the Houston area, nearly 12,000 workers are rushing to restore power to 1.6 million customers as temperatures soared today into the 90s.
We are urging them to work as quickly as they can to restore the power in the safest, but in the quickest way they can.
Harris County has opened cooling centers to help, giving residents a space to stay cool and charge their devices. In Channelview, just east of Houston, Yvette Carrasco and her family have been without power since Monday morning, staying outside because it was too hot inside. While we were talking, this happened.
Are you okay? About to not be okay.
You're not? Are you
No.
okay? Okay.
Can I get a chair? From back to hurry up.
After we found some shade and a chair, we continued.
Do you ever wonder that if you'll survive the hurricane, but you won't survive the aftermath?
I don't know. I mean, we've had so far, but it gets tiring. You know, it gets tiring of doing this over and over.
One thing frustrating residents is that they can't check CenterPoint Energy's outage map to see if their power has been restored because it was knocked offline by another storm in May. Houston's mayor says that he plans to hold CenterPoint accountable if they cannot restore power to 1 million customers by tomorrow, as promised. Nora?
Really important reporting, Omar Villafranca. Thank you. Now let's bring in CBS New York's Lonnie Quinn for a look at the flood and storm threats and the extreme heat on both coasts. Good to see you, Lonnie.
Okay, well, good evening. Nice seeing you as well, Nora. And hello, everybody. I want to jump right into the current status of Beryl. It's no longer a tropical storm. It's a rainmaker, but you've got winds associated with this. Now, not sustained winds, but twist in the atmosphere. Take a look at this. Indiana to Illinois, that's where we find it as of right now. And tonight, Indiana all the way to Michigan, you could pick up 4 to 6 inches of rain. We've already had 2 confirmed tornadoes touching down in Kentucky and Indiana, and a tornado watch is in effect for you folks till 11 p.m. Central Time. The amount of rain we're talking about, all right, as it pushes through the areas, like I said, anywhere from, say, Indiana into Michigan, you're talking about that 4 to 6 inch range. But take a look, once it gets into, upstate New York and into northern New England, with the orographic lift as the air mass drives up and over the mountains, you're pulling out up to 9 inches of rain in about 12 hours. But the story thus far that we've been talking about day after day after day has been the heat. It's centralized on the West Coast and on the East Coast. I want to start off with the East Coast. Look at this. Philly tomorrow hits 96. Crazy humidity. It feels like 110. Columbus, South Carolina, you're 99, feeling like 109. Houston, where you could use some air conditioning, well, it's 94, feeling like 100. Hopefully they can get that situation fixed for you folks. Out west, numbers are even bigger, but as you know, the humidity, not as much an issue for you out there. Boise, it's 110, Las Vegas, 119. Any relief? Well, for the East Coast, possibly a Friday, Saturday setup will give you a little bit of a setback from all the big numbers. Nora, it's all yours.
Lonnie Quinn, thank you. Now we'll look at tonight's other top stories, and we start with this breaking news. A member of Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor's protection detail shot a carjacking suspect near the justice's home. CBS's Nicole Skenga has the details just coming in.
We're just learning tonight, Nora, 2 deputy U.S. Marshals opened fire on a suspected carjacker near the home of Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor last week. 18-year-old Contrell Flowers sustained a non-life-threatening injury to the jaw after allegedly tapping this gun against the car window of a deputy U.S. Marshal standing post near Sotomayor's home. Flowers is now charged with armed carjacking and carrying a pistol without a license. D.C. police are still investigating, but say there's no indication the suspect targeted the Supreme Court justice or knew who he was attempting to carjack.
Now to New Mexico, where Alec Baldwin's involuntary manslaughter trial is now underway, and opening statements could begin as early as tomorrow. CBS's Elise Preston was in the courtroom for jury selection.
The fate of Alec Baldwin will be decided by 12 jurors and 4 alternates here in Santa Fe, Nora.
How are you feeling this morning?
On the first official day of his trial, Baldwin arrived at the courthouse. While inside, attorneys questioned a pool of 70 potential jurors about their ability to be impartial. Just 3 of them said they never heard or saw anything about this widely publicized case. Jurors were also asked their thoughts on workplace safety, gun ownership, and their personal connections to the film industry. If convicted, Baldwin could face 18 months in prison.
And overseas now to Barcelona with summer travel season underway. Tourists are filling the city and protesters are spraying them with water. Why? CBS's Chris Livesay explains.
Nora, the Trevi Fountain is on a lot of bucket lists, maybe too many. An estimated 1,000 tourists visit this Rome landmark every hour, but perhaps no city is more disgruntled than Barcelona. Take a look at protesters in the Spanish city squirting tourists with water guns. Over the weekend, thousands of marchers blamed them for raising the cost of living and lowering the quality of life. It's bad in Venice, too, where the city has introduced an entrance fee, a little more than $5 a day for day trippers.
When a Wyoming highway collapsed outside Jackson Hole last month, it threw a spotlight on something important. 2 very different Americas often live side by side. In the U.S., the top 1% now owns nearly as much wealth as the bottom 90%. As CBS's Mark Strassman shows us in tonight's Eye on America, Wyoming is home to one of the wealthiest communities and also one of the most unequal.
In Jackson Hole, Wyoming's Shangri-La in the Tetons, you need silly money to be taken seriously.
A family like mine can't live here. Not even an inkling of a chance.
John Smaley's a construction supervisor in Jackson. Like so many workers here, he can only afford to live on the other side of these mountains, priced out of Jackson Hole's new Gilded Age. Vacationing 1%ers competing for a second home or a fourth.
The billionaires are buying out the millionaires.
It sounds crazy.
It does. You're making a great wage anywhere else in the country, but here you're poverty stricken.
For most people here, real estate prices are wildly unaffordable. This county's median income is $108,000 a year, but the average listing price of a single-family home is more than $7 million.
Driving home the inequality, Smaley's commute over this mountain pass from his house in Driggs, Idaho. It's an hour drive or more to downtown Jackson, with its Old West charm and sticker shock. That's where we met Jessica Sell Chambers.
A lot of these stores, your average working person, this is not for us.
She's a Jackson Town Council member and mayoral candidate. Sell Chambers told us this downtown project is typical. Luxury short-term rentals.
What would you like it to be?
I would love it to be a multifamily, affordable housing.
But that would have been costly and was never an option.
This is beyond gentrification. This is super gentrification.
You can make $200,000, $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
And not afford to live here.
Correct. It's unsustainable too. Who's going to run the place? Who's going to work and be the backbone of all the services?
Even for people with all the money in the world, there's a moment of reckoning coming.
Yes.
That moment flashed briefly last month. The mountain pass collapsed, 80 feet of it gone. A landslide impassable for 3 weeks, further separating the two worlds.
You're on the TV.
Feeling it in Driggs, Idaho, Pete and Sarah Wilson and their daughter Harper. Sarah's a media creative director. Pete's a firefighter paramedic in Jackson, their hometown.
You feel excluded from the place you grew up in?
100%.
Yeah.
I'm the help, even though I'm a firefighter paramedic. Once we're done doing the job, we're expected to kick rocks, get lost.
If you're looking at the American dream or whatever, like if you work hard enough, you can have what you want, but you can't.
It's not just gone for now, it's gone forever.
It's gone forever.
Sel Chambers' Jackson home has exploded in value, but the property taxes may drive her family out.
We don't want to go anywhere. It's the money is not important to us, it's the community.
The mountain pass has reopened. The divide stays in place. For Eye on America, Mark Strassman in Jackson, Wyoming.
It's a good piece. And our new investigation is next with a look at how Texans' taxpayer dollars are funding groups that aim to stop women from seeking an abortion. We turn now to a CBS News and ProPublica investigation into crisis pregnancy centers, which aim to stop women from seeking an abortion. Lawmakers say they are critical to supporting women after birth. But as CBS's Caitlin Huey-Burns reports, there's little accountability for how that money is spent in a state that leads the nation in funding them, Texas, also a state where abortion is almost entirely banned.
Every day, nurse Megan Wheeler drives across Texas' Brazos Valley, caring for new young mothers.
Good morning, how are you?
Like 16-year-old Ava Bradley and her 1-year-old son, Mateo.
Thank you.
They connected through the Nurse Family Partnership, a free program that pairs nurses with low-income first-time moms.
Any fever for either of you, or just?
No.
Nurses have been able to intervene and be able to save our women and children from dying.
But the program is struggling to meet demand.
We're able to serve maybe a quarter of the referrals.
So last year, they asked the Texas legislature for an extra $19 million. They got $2.2 million. Meanwhile, the state program called Alternatives to Abortion, which includes funds for crisis pregnancy centers, got enough extra funding last year that it had $14 million left over for future use. For years, Democratic State Representative Donna Howard has questioned how Alternatives to Abortion operates.
I don't know of any other program that the state administers that is treated in the same way, not one.
A CBS News and ProPublica investigation uncovered a payment model that allows the program's largest contractor, Texas Pregnancy Care Network, to charge the state $14 for handing out a pamphlet as part of its services.
If taxpayer dollars aren't being spent appropriately, then we will hold those responsible accountable.
Republican State Representative Jeff Leach is one of the program's most ardent supporters.
This program is really meant to provide the full weight and resources of the state government, not just before pregnancy, but after pregnancy as well.
But those resources are not reaching some struggling families, like at this Austin diaper bank line.
Thank you.
Where a stream of cars lines up for free supplies every week. Diaper banks sought state funding last year, but got nothing.
There are families out there, I would love to give them diapers, but diapers don't grow on trees.
A spokesperson for the state said it takes stewardship of taxpayer dollars very seriously, and Texas Pregnancy Care Network told us its services are responsive to clients' needs. Also of note, last September, Alternatives to Abortion got a new name, Thriving Texas Families. Nora?
We need to support these families. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you. 2 passenger jets appear to come close to colliding in midair. We'll explain what happened next. The FAA is investigating a frightening sight in the sky over Syracuse, New York, where it appears 2 passenger jets flew too close to each other. Police dashcam video shows what looks like 2 planes nearly crossing paths, one taking off, the other landing. According to flight radar, one of the planes flew within about 700 feet above the other. Both made it to their destinations safely. Heart of America is next.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Breasttree. Visit us at breasttree.com.
Finally, tonight's Heart of America. Meet a Miami student who knows how to keep a promise. From pre-K through 12th grade, Keith Holmes Jr. never missed a day of school, thanks to a pact that he made with his late father. After Keith's father died in 2018, he stuck to his promise and also completed nearly 5,000 hours of community service. Keith says working with children with disabilities puts everything in perspective.
I had a village of people behind me. Put your mind to it.
do it, keep your faith, and have determination and perseverance and never give up.
Keith Holm Jr.'s He's Tonight's Heart of America. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. Good night.